I want to apologize for being so short. All you see is my forehead. There's more to me than just that. What I always like to do is start with a recognition that we're talking about our Nijibimadazik, our fellow living beings. And it's a prayer that, you know, when you think about, like, we're surrounded by these beautiful living beings, and when you talk in the language, you don't say like he or she did that. You say this living being is over there doing this. And there isn't a judgment about, is it a human? Is it an oak tree? Is it an ant? Is it a deer? It's a living being. And you would say, Niji B'madazik, our fellow living beings, or Gidino Taganag, the ones that are listening to us. So I always like to start with a thought or a prayer in the language that just recognizes what we're doing here. I'm trying to speak on behalf of those living beings so that we can remember that they're here with us, and maybe they speak different languages or have different ways than we have, that they're very much alive and here with us. Yashagwani Mikaki Mao Jibwing Buddha and Sequay Nigo, they cannot do the Tawan Shkun getting in Dujaban. Yashua giving Guinea the Manongo, Yungo Mai Duga, Bemadizic, Mizime Oma Ake. Ashigwa give you what Bandamago, Money Duga, Bemadizic away, Diama Wabanong, me which we are giving Pia Go Manongo, giving Mawa Dishaway Oma Ake, Kichemi, which. They were Pagadana Sema, Dapnama Washin. You know, I gave Gikina money to Gabe, Madisi Jagamajawan, Nikwich, Gaashe, Giwin, Ungo, money to Gig Beneshiwa, Pijay Oma Ake. They were Pagadana Sema, Dapnama Washin. Meanwhile, I gave Wadi and Martin and Gabiano, Kenaman Ungo, money to suck. Me gay Ungo, what you mean? We gave Kiayawa, the Mashkawi Gabo. We need one away, we Mawdishwe Marke. They were Pagrina Sema, Dapno Mawashin. You know, I gave waiting on Ongo, Gabi Bunakade, me, which give me Mawdishwe Manungo. Want to say thank you for that snow, a little snow we had today. On Zambu, I want to mind me where Adazuke Bongi Nungum, which give me Pijago Manungo, they were Pagrina Sema, Dapno Mawashin. You know, I gave Inja a kid. Me ranting the kina money doing something, you know, the short of market. They were putting in our same talking about machine. You know, I gave Binja in the become inside that water. I have one of my nutrical money doing so gape madisig and my Binja, all those little insects, all life that needs that water. Anyway, kid in my kitchen, which we can we were pugging in our same dapping my ocean. Meanwhile, in my Gichi Ongavi Pijayagama, Ishbaya, they were Pugana, Sema, Dapama, Shin. So we're Joanna Missionam gives you money do, Joanna Missionam gives you money do, Joanna Missionam gives you money do, Joanna Missionam gives you money do. So when you hear that, and a lot of times it's very similar in some of the other tribes, you're saying we are surrounded by life, by spirits in the four directions, underneath us in Mother Earth. In the water world and in the sky world, we're surrounded by life. We didn't create that life. We're just a part of that. And we're reminded of that sometimes in that speech that was attributed to Chief Seattle about we didn't make the web of life. We're merely a strand in it. Whatever befalls the earth befalls us. So it's a reminder all the time. In fact, I want to tell when we're just looking at all the different kinds of bugs and all the creative beings and the things that are here with us on this earth at this time, you'll hear people always say, oh, my kid, here on this earth, that there's other dimensions as well. So I just want to do a little bit of a reminder of how this has all come together. The way I was told is that the first thing there was the vibration, the shishi one, and now science knows that's true, that we're all, if you look close enough, we're vibrations, just like the insects are vibrations, the earth is vibrations, the sun is vibrations. So as these things came into being, the creator, they say, and I believe, to me there is a creator and spirits You know, they say that's the great spirit. Gije Manidu, the loving spirit. Manidu Nigan is the leading spirit. Different ways of thinking about a creative force. That Mother Earth is the mother principle, the sun is the male principle, and they didn't need us. They don't need us. You know, the Earth, she's fine. And the story goes, the creator says, do you want some comfort? You know, and she has the water as her blood, you know, that's her veins are the rivers. She goes, sure, I'd like some hair. So the plants come, but they're really dependent on Mother Earth, so they can't grow just anywhere. They have to be where there's soil and where there's certain kinds of temperatures and certain kinds of different things that can nurture their life. So who do you think is next? The little bitty ones, the tiny, tiny ones. So we're starting to see that the little ones have all sorts of roles and are very much diverse and have so many different ways of being. And they come and they're with her then. She doesn't have to be lonely. And so then the animals are there and they have all different kinds of roles to play and be there to keep her company. And then guess who's the most foolish ones? The very last ones that think they just know everything. Us. So they say, none of those things need us. We need all of them. They don't need us. So I would say, being the last ones here and the most foolish, our job is to pay attention to our elders. Our elders, the bugs, the trees, the animals, the earth, all those things, grandma, moon, father, son, pay attention and learn to them so we don't get so foolish that we wobble right off the earth or do ourselves in. So there's so many stories about these elders that were here before us. And if you are going through life, I encourage you to come to this park and just start to notice these little tiny ones and what they do and how they live and how they are intertwined in all life. We can't do without them. So let's look at the first slide here. So you can see all these different forms, but I guess one of the things I want to recognize too is that biodiversity. And one of the first slides is of a wasp. So I'm not trying to scare people. This brought me back to a time when, yes. Oh, see, this is how bad I am at technology.
When you're ready for the next one, just
okay. So when I was young, my mom would always say to me, go help that elder. That's just what it's supposed to be like, you know, like those young ones help the elders and the elders help the young ones. So the way I was told, it's like a great big circle when you come into this world and you're a little baby, and then you have this circle of this life, and then you go out that same doorway. That's where the elders and the children are together, because the little ones are coming in and the old ones are going out. So she'd always say, go help that elder. And it wasn't uncommon for elders to ask for that medicine right there. And you'll look at that bald-faced, or, you know, the bald-faced hornet nest, and just a reminder about how is that medicine? How is it? How can that be? So many ways. And so I just wanted to look at one particular being and our relationship with them. Well, we know the pollinators, and you see this little guy here with his face like that. When we were at the Dreamworld Health Farm, we had an old dead spruce tree, and the kids would just get fascinated by, look at how he spits and then he scrapes, spits and scrapes, and he makes this beautiful nest, right? So that sense of peace comes, you know, it's like, oh, look, that being has a purpose. We might not know what the purpose is, so we can pay attention and learn. So during the course of my life, I was always being asked to go gather plants for somebody or go find something for an elder. So this was a fairly common thing that people would ask for. So for the Ojibwe folks, they would like to get that bald-faced hornet nest. And I'll talk about a couple elders, Wasabikiban from Panema. She would ask me for that, and she would use that as a headache medicine. But you don't want to take it when the wasps are still using it, because that's their home. We won't want them to take our home, you know, so you wait till the cold winds come, and they mostly leave. Sometimes there'll be one in there, but she would, I remember one time her sister was really sick over there in the hospital downtown Minneapolis, and she was in her walker, and we were bringing one of those into the hospital. She was gonna roll it and burn it and use it for migraines. And you know, sometimes people would say, oh no, we need to kill wasps, we need to spray them with poison. And you don't think about, like, wait a minute, they have gifts. So back the same time when Lakota folks would come, they would say, oh, I want the other part. So what other part? Those layers inside. So I didn't know. I would just fetch the inside, go like, here you go. And then one time I was sitting with some people from the bee lab, and they said, oh yeah, Julia Brokaw. And I said, I always wonder how, I don't know how to use this one, but I bring it to them. That's my job, is just to bring it. But I said, look at these little black pieces. When you wet them and put them on your skin, it's so beautiful. It looks like rainbow sequins inside of there. And she goes, yeah, I never noticed that before. And we were talking about that. What could that be? Oh, it's wasp propolis. Well, nowadays you hear all these different kinds of healing techniques with propolis. And you think about like how these insects have been doing this for thousands of years, and nobody has said, what are some of these gifts? I remember years ago, we were working with bird skins, and you have to be patient working with bird skins because they're so thin. And I had 16 wasps just like this, and they don't want to sting me. They're just there because they wanted to eat some of that meat. They want to share some food, you know? So that was one of the lessons we'd always do, is remember, they just need to eat too. So in the fall, when they're really abundant, you'll see them come, and they'll want to eat some of your food too. So it's not uncommon for us to do like a spirit plate, a thank you plate. You put that out, and you're showing that you're sharing your food with all the living beings, not just the humans, but recognize that all the living beings have to eat. In essence, we're thinking about the spirits, the unseen ones that are around us. But the way to say bug in Ojibwe is Manidunt Sug, which translates into little spirit. So all of the bugs are little spirits. There was a fellow who was kind of a well-known presenter, and that was his name, great big strapping guy, and his name was Little Spirit, Little Bug. But you know, when you think about it, sure, we can say he's just a little bug, but think of how powerful and how many and how important the bugs are in this world. There was also, I don't want to just talk about one tribal group, because in so many of the different tribal ways, the insects were respected and recognized. I know one of the warriors that traveled around with Crazy Horse, his name was Worm, real powerful man. So you see in all these different tribes. Also, if you see this wasp nest, I remember going down to North Carolina, Cherokee country, and they were talking about their lodge, and they said, well, you know, we have a boogie man. I'm like, and they said, well, we actually call him a booger man. And I said, a booger man? And they said, yeah, a booger man. I said, oh, I don't know about that. And they said, oh yeah, we would take a wasp nest like this, and just 3 holes, you know, 2 eyes and a mouth, and someone would be the boogeyman and come in. And it was a psychological healing. It was, I'm the worst thing you can imagine. You're not going to have clean water anymore. You're going to lose your land. You're going to be in suffering. And the people would have the opportunity to respond to the boogeyman. So it was a psychological way of, how do you deal with your fears? So that's an example of how that different, not just like the physical healing, but the mental and emotional healing of working with insects, how they show up. Okay, let's look at another slide. Oh, here's me, I gotta do it. Oh, here we are, another really, really terrifying being. Zogimeg, that when you're talking about sucking, when they're sucking, zogaswa means like to take in the medicine from the pipe. So when you see that little larva right there, those are the larvae of the mosquito. And I remember I was working with a fellow at Dream Wild Health who was an Arapaho man, and he said, "Oh, gee, did you ever hear about that? Was an important food source for the Mayan folks, full of protein, used as a really effective way of harnessing and making sure there was protein in foods, fats, because most of the insects have those exoskeletons that are made out of lipids." Well, because we had snow today, I can tell a little bit of a story that I can only tell stories when the snow is around, because they say, you want to make sure that you're respectful to those beings that need to rest and that are resting when the snow is around and the frogs haven't sung yet. And some of these stories, these were passed to me from a lady from Panema in Red Lake, Minnesota. Ona Kingbird was her name. And there was a story that she talks about that has one of the really, really challenging beings in the story. And this challenging being reflects a lot of what you might see as fear in society today. They would say, "Oh, there was a Wendigo." And Wendigo is really frightening. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't even want to say that word," because they would say in the end of the winter time, if people were really hungry, they could get this Wendigo sickness, or that it really was a giant that would eat, humanity, and it had a heart made out of ice. And the more it ate, the bigger it got. It didn't satisfy its hunger, it just got more hungry. So people would get a sickness, they would say they'd get Wendigo sickness. Well, nowadays you hear it all the time when they'd say, the more he eats, the more he wants. And they said, this society has Wendigo sickness because the more money they have, the more they want. They want more, more than they could possibly use, just like the Wendigo who eats his own lips because he's so hungry, he just wants more. And then the food even falls out faster from his mouth. So in this story, they say, they were able to trap a Wendigo that was after this village a long, long time ago, hundreds of years ago, up north here, up by Lake Superior. And they were able to trap him, but they didn't know how to control him. So finally they trapped him in a little box rocky area, and they made a fire, and they had to burn him, and they thought, well, maybe that'll take care of the Wendigo. Well, once that burnt being was there, they looked down and there were all these ashes, and then the wind came and blew the ashes, and all those ashes were mosquitoes. So when you see this mosquito, you can see it's actually on an orchid. And you're like, ooh, it's pollinating that orchid. We need mosquitoes. They feed so many birds and other beings that need them for food, but they also can be vectors of a reminder of how do we live in this world. And we know now, with humanity not recognizing how important each and every living being is and how they're all connected like this really sophisticated web that we have not been able to conceptualize at all. Like, we just try and we're like, oh, well, we thought it was this way, but oops, we were wrong again. So looking at the importance of every single one of these and going, okay, we can't just say we're going to get rid of mosquitoes and then everything will be fine. because we know what we've done is set up a system for what? Birds, animals, insects, trees, plants, everybody, us. So we have to look at the consequences of our behavior for not thinking that we're a part of this, but finding a way to live in harmony with it. And sometimes it's tough. So one of the things that I want to share, and this sounds pretty controversial, but this was from Ernie Whiteman, who I worked with for years at Dream Wild Health, but also Ogima Gwinabik from Minneapolis-Saint up in Canada. They would always say, you eat what you kill. Oh, I don't like mosquitoes. Oh, you gotta eat that mosquito now. And I said to Ogima Gwinabik, even basic hug, text. Yup. I'm like, oh no, tell me about that. And this is what she said. She said, we don't know who comes here, or when they come here, what they might be carrying, meaning the insects. And she goes, when you eat them, you're letting your body know who's here. And if they're carrying a challenge, a sickness, or whatever. And the idea was, oh, it's sort of like an inoculation. You're letting your body know that the ticks are here, the mosquitoes are here, and you're taking responsibility for life. And it kind of goes even deeper about like, sure, that's a mosquito. It's made out of cells. It has all, I mean, certainly it's clear that when it's sucking some of my blood, that it's part of me and I'm part of it. But now science is getting more and more aware of, oh my gosh, it's really true. If you look at the top of that spruce tree, it's gonna, on a cellular level, have DNA from the bear that walked by, or the fish that died there, or the person that took a poop right next to the tree. So all those things are so interrelated. Okay, let's look at the next one. Oh, that's me. Sounds just awful. So some of you might want to hear, some of you might want to hear, when I was younger and I was living in this area, we would go down, this was pre-casinos when everybody was broke, and the Native folks were still really having a hard time. And it's true today. I don't know why there always seems to be so many challenges in our community, but some of our old ways were old healing ways. And in some of the communities, they have different representations. Like you see that little yellow spider inside of there. I'll hear people up north, like in Ojibwe country, talking about the Asubakinishi, the little net maker up in the sky world in the constellations. That one is watching over the hole in the day, and that some people would say, oh, was it the Asubakinishi, the spider that lowered people from the sky world down to this earth? So you'll hear that, or you might hear more so like for our Dakota, Nakota, Lakota relatives, they'll talk about Iktomi or Umktomi is their trickster, and they have a very powerful representation, but they're usually a spider. You know, he likes, his go-to is a spider. For the stories that I get to tell, his go-to is he likes to be a rabbit, but he might be a dead moose or gee, he could be anything. For a while, he says, I want to see what it's like to be a woman. So he's a woman for a while, he gets married, he decides he wants to be a tree trunk, he can be anything. So it kind of is part of what I was referring to before about how on a cellular level, we really are so interconnected. But for this one, I wanted this picture because this reminded me of years ago, they used to have a ceremony down there at Prairie Island, and they still do. But back then, it was there was a fellow there who did. They called him the Umtoni Voodoo. I can't speak Dakota, but he's talking about the spider songs, and he'd tell us. He said, "I'm going to sing a spider song," and he'd start to sing. And as soon as he started to sing, we're in the dark, and there's the rocks there, hot rocks. And all of a sudden you'd feel hundreds of spiders. And you'd say, no, they're doctoring you. They're pulling sickness out of you. And that was what he was working with them. Those were his helpers. So he'd start singing, and as he sings, you can feel those spiders touching you, hundreds of them. And you can feel them as they go up and they climb up your face. And as he does the last beat of the song, dum, dum, you can feel them. They go off the top of your head. So it's one of those things where you're being reminded that, you know, just what we see is not all there is. So if he's working with these, again, little spirits, and they're taking away the sickness, they're pulling that sickness out of our body. You don't ever have to feel like, oh, it's a spider. And one of the worst is like, kill it. No, you're not need to kill it. No, kill it. Put it outside. It's real common to hear that in Native. It's like if somebody sees a spider, put it outside. Please don't kill it. So this one, I was so happy to see the black and white jumping spider with the blue chelicera. I love to see them. We have them up at the Dream Wild Health Farm, the little bitty ones. But I remember one time I was down in Florida and I felt somebody's looking at me. I wonder who it is. Is it a deer? I don't know who it is. And I looked over and it was a black and white jumping spider, about the size of my hand. It was really big. And it just jumped, 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 and landed right on my chest. And it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do? I can thank the spider. I don't know what it's bringing me. And a lot of times I won't know for a long time. Maybe I'll never know. But pay attention to those things, pay attention to those dreams. That spider, it went down my foot and it stood on one toe and then hopped over to the other toe, then went back up and landed on my chest again, and then was touching my chin with his leg. And it's like, I don't know what the lesson is, but I know one thing, to respect life in all of its life's forms. So sometimes that's the lesson. One of the things I've heard over and over again from elders is every bug, every little blade of plant, every leaf, everything has gifts. And every single one of us is here for a reason. And you might not know why you're here yet, but take that time. You know, if you need to go outside, sit by a tree and start to ask, why am I here? What can I do as a being here on this earth at this time? And you'll get those intuitive hits. They're like, oh, okay, maybe my voice is going to be for the bugs, for the little ones who aren't speaking the language of the people, that we can speak out and say, please don't be, spraying poison all over your yard. I worked down there in Florida for a while, and at the school where I worked, they would spray a toxin to kill all the insects. And then the kids would go out and they'd come back in, and the toxin was colored. So you'd see the kids just covered in this color, and it was toxic, So, of course, putting poison all over everything has consequences. Just like when you have a GMO plant that's been bred to kill the insects so we can get more money. Again, money is the thing where you turn stuff into money and then it's gone. So if you turn this new, what looks like corn, but it's really highly toxic that's growing out there, and the poor bees die and the birds die, and like, oh my gosh, it just looks like growing corn. We're not supposed to call it corn anymore because it's just being used to create methane for cars and things like that. We've got to remember that they need something to eat too, the bugs and the insects and all those beings. I know there was a Ho-Chunk farmer we worked with at the Dream Wild Health who was really clear about that. She'd say, when you look at an ear corn, those little worms back in the day, when they'd be eating around the little point there, they're reminding us, a third of everything, give it back to the other living beings. So the first third goes back to the worms, the insects, the raccoons, the deer, whoever else needs to eat. The next third is for your seed for next year. And then the last third is that's what you can eat. So always remembering, don't turn it into money because money has truly no value. Let's go to the next. Here's me. Well, here, I love this plant. There goes New England aster. We've got some of that growing out at the farm, and it flowers the end of the summer, and the roots are used for if you feel your being is like leaving your physical body. And I know I've heard of people getting like, can't be doing that. You're here in this body for a certain reason, and you chose that body anyway. Now find a way to stick around with that body. So that plant, that is one that is used for that. But here's a memengua. Memengua, the when you hear that meme, it means that something is flickering. So we used to count at the farm. There, that Arapaho fella and I would count, and usually by July we'd see 300 monarchs, and then we'd quit counting because it's like, oh, we see a lot of monarchs. But then it went down and down, and one year we only saw 30. We still had lots of milkweed, but we had GMO corn on both sides. And then one year it was down to 13, but now it's starting to come back again. So one of the things that I remember was a good lesson that he spoke about was when you look at that chrysalis and you go like, it just looks like green goo, you know, you can't see any like, where is the exoskeleton in the wings? No, it just looks like green goo. And it was a reminder of when we go through that powerful change where we might feel like we're nothing but green goo. We don't know what's coming next. So that's one of those beautiful lessons about the Mamengua. And when you see our dancers, the young ladies usually, or it can be guys if they're doing fancy dancing, they might have that on their outfits, the butterflies, and you'll see that it looks like wings when the young ladies are dancing like that. We're coming into butterfly season, and of course the butterflies are pollinators too. I want to give a promotion to, there's this lady named Heather Holm. I just think the world of her. She's working with the plants, the native plants and native insects to find out who pollinates what. And a lot of times it's like, surprise, it's nothing what we thought about. And it would be like a one-to-one relationship. Like, oh, this specific fly pollinates this specific flower or plant. And if something happens to that fly, we're going to lose that. So some of her new work has been about like the pollinators that don't even go actually into the plant or even touch the pollen, but just sit there and vibrate and get the pollen to release through vibrating. So it's really interesting. The word of it, if you all are getting bored, look at insects. Can't even get bored. They're so creative. This week I was out doing prayers in the woods, and I want to recognize that mostly it's just thank yous. You know, thank you for all this beauty and getting calm enough to see all the beauty. But this is a kind of a butterfly called a question mark, and I saw 4 of them flying around this week. And they overwinter by going behind bark. You know, they'll be underneath the bark of a tree. And when they just first warm up, they'll fly around and they'll sit in a warm spot. And it brought me back to when I was a little girl. And we had, you know, there was a farmer that lived on the road and they had a cattle crossing, and we would look and see those mamengua, those question mark butterflies. They would hibernate underneath the cow crossing. And so you'd be in the depth of winter, and my sister and I, just to remind ourselves that there's beauty in the world, we would go over to that cow crossing and just admire them. And you can see, you know, when you saw them when they were hibernating or resting or whatever, I don't know the official term, but they would be closed up like that. But once they were ready to absorb the heat, they would open their wings like that. If you look on there, it kind of looks like a little question mark. You see that little white thing? It looks like a little question mark. So it's those are the kinds of things like, oh, that's why it's called a question mark. I'm hoping that they can hang in there. Of course, they're going to need food just like all the other insects need food. So let's go to the next one. So we have here two together, and these are two different stories. One of the stories I heard this winter, because I like listening to old-timey native stories too, and it was a story about the caddisfly larva. You see that looks like just a little pile of sticks in her hand. That's actually a larva of the caddisfly that looks like a little worm, and they'll glue sticks and rocks and all kinds of things to their back to like just hide out in the stream. Well, in this particular story, the snapping turtle is going to a ceremony, and the caddisfly wants to go to the ceremony too, so he hides in the folds of the skin of the snapping turtle. Snapping turtle pulls his head in, and now here goes that caddisfly is stuck in there and is listening and wants to hear what the snapping turtle has to say. So, I mean, it's just beautiful, you know, to think that there's these old, like, who knows how old, thousands of years old stories that are recognizing these little tiny bugs. And then you find out that, in Sweden, there's a type of a flower that is pollinated only by caddisfly larvae, adult caddisfly. Next to it, you see a regular housefly, and of course, there's all different kinds of flies, but those two, gotta remember they're pollinators. So this guy right here, this housefly, this summer I was really worried. I work at a Ojibwe immersion school on Wednesday mornings, and we were worried because it's like, oh, I don't know if you should tell stories. There's not enough snow. I don't think the frogs are singing, but I know some of the storytellers said, no stories this winter. It's just too warm. We can't tell the legends, the Atazukanag. And I brought one of the ladies aside and said, I know you want me to tell the stories, but I'm worried that someone might be listening. And when I said that, it was really interesting. A fly came from the outside and sat right on the window. I said, oh, see, somebody might be listening. So in a lot of the stories, you'll hear how things change form, and the insects sure make it clear. I mean, when you look at a fly, it goes from a maggot to a fly, you know, it's like, okay, they change form. We have that capability too. And in the old stories, you'll hear a lot about Anji Idizon, you know, like I am going to change my form, you know, and you'll hear stories about that. And it's a very real understanding that that can happen. At that particular time, we were gonna try to show the kids how to set rabbit snares. And we were like, gosh, there's not enough snow, so we couldn't follow the tracks. So I said, hey, I got my uncle's old rabbit hunting bow in my car. We can go get some. So I was talking in Ojibwe, it was an Ojibwe immersion. I said, get this out of our bows, what you doing? So they were little bitty ones. I said, go get that rabbit, you can kill that rabbit. It was a pretend. So we're doing it, all the kids do it, and the very last little guy is out there. He's gonna go try to get the rabbit, and a rabbit appears. A real rabbit, I mean, physically appears. We think it's a rabbit. So there's 5 other ladies there, and they go, oh, there's It's like they're telling me, you should change. So they're telling me I'm supposed to go get that rabbit. I'm like, okay, and it's real close. Choo, choo. And I missed the rabbit 3 times. Like, how did I miss the rabbit? It was right there. So we go inside, and one of the ladies stays outside. Then she comes back in, and she goes like, oh, there wasn't any tracks. Was it a rabbit? We don't know. But those kinds of things, just open your heart up to the possibility of all kinds of things happening. Okay, here's a story. Now this is one that's kind of silly too, but it's true. Remember I told that thing about like Ogimagwanabik and Ernie, they would always say to the kids, and I always say to the kids, you kill it, you eat it. You don't have to keep, I mean, if you're out there getting squash bugs, you don't have to like fill up on squash bugs, but at least you have to take responsibility responsibility for killing a life form that we don't even know all the importance of it. So here I was at a youth conference in Hawaii this fall, and it was all Native youth workers. And we're sitting there, and most of those Native people, you know, they're like, oh, yeah, you get to see all kinds of life forms here. And here goes a great big old centipede. And it starts running through the building. And there were two ladies that weren't with us. And those two ladies jumped up on the chair and then jumped up at the table and they said, kill it, kill it. And there were these two ladies that I know that said, don't kill it. Hope will make you eat it. I got a reputation. Yeah, so those are some of the pictures of all the different butterflies, and I don't know how to change that, but or the insects and bugs. And I love that when they included the world of bugs, they said bugs, not just insects. Because I know even those little bitty ones, we want them to think about all the importance of the different forms of bugs. You know, don't just think, oh, they have to have 6 legs and 3 body parts. You know, they might be a slug, they might be a snail, they might be appearing in all sorts of different forms, and spend some time with them, get to know them. You know, they might be something that is a helper. Now, they all have a place, like I said in the first place, but this is part of the teaching. Is like every single one of you has different life experiences, and all around you, you have invisible ones. You've got helpers, Gidinotaganum, that are maybe a great grandma, maybe a little one who never even materialized on this planet, maybe a being, you know, that's an animal. I don't know. That's for you to know. But they're around you and they're helping you. So part of what you can do in this time when there's a lot of anxiety and depression or challenges, spend some time out there. Spend some time with our fellow living beings and get some more clarity about what's really important. You know, when you see, you know, these insects, when you spend some time this week when I got to see those butterflies, it brought me back to what is really real. Those butterflies are really real and they're beautiful and there's beauty here. I mean, I can get my head all spun around about politics or something like that bad driver driving ahead of me today. Doesn't do me any good, doesn't do that person any good. You know, if I keep reframing things and say, this is a gift to pass on to our young ones, go out there and see something beautiful. Go out there and see a miracle of a chrysalis breaking open and a butterfly coming out. I mean, oh my gosh, there's so much out there. And it's an endless miracle to watch what's going on. Last night I was watching about the spiders, how they said the spiders can send out their thread and travel in the atmosphere. They were monitoring this one type of spider. They said it can travel 1,000 miles because of the charges in the atmosphere, the atmosphere above the planet, the electrical charges versus the electrical charges in the earth. We all have that. The bugs have it, the humans have it, the trees have it. We're all in this together. So if that's the message that somehow you can put out there, you know, and just love each other up, our fellow living beings. That's what it's all about to me. And even those concepts about, I remember going out and hearing Ogimagwenebik. We went out to thank the wild rice one season before we went ricing. And it was a year when there was lots and lots of rice worms. And said, oh no, there's lots of rice worms. And she goes, oh, just cook them up, just add a little bit more worm grease, a little bit extra flavor. So like, okay. So I heard her praying and she was saying, you know, her thank yous to Mani du Naganazito Gitikaning. We're here in the Creator's Garden. This is it. That's it right there. And we have to think about how we interplay with all those living beings. So I hope that this has been just maybe an idea starter, something to get people thinking. Just being grateful for all those little reminders that you know, that they're all around us at all times. And then just for some of you who maybe are interested in the native languages, if you go like into some of the languages, like I know for sure the Algonquin-based languages, it's all about life. It's all about your relationship to life. So if I'm talking right here and I say something, I have to think about the verb, the noun, you know, the whole thing. I've got to think about, is that a living being just as alive as I am? I want to thank you for letting me be here. I hope you learned something. Go out there, enjoy the bugs. You know I did. Thanks for being here today. Enjoy.